Let's talk about love stories today, because why not? A new adaptation of the classic novel Wuthering Heights is in theaters right now. And speaking both as a writer and as an English teacher, I have absolutely no intention of seeing this movie. I'm sorry, I know that sounds blasphemous to some people, but I've just never been able to get into that genre of literature. I'm not a fan of the Brontes, Charlotte, Emily, Anne. Same goes for the Austens, Jane, Chuck. Wuthering Heights, read the whole book, still don't know how the heights weather. I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just saying it's not the kind of story that I enjoy. And I don't mean love stories, I enjoy a good love story. A good love story. But stuff like Wuthering Heights, Pride and Prejudice, these big, weeping, billowy dramas about people who are drawn together through some sort of inescapable magnetism. A lot of the time, these couples strike me as very unrealistic once that initial smoldering wears off. I think there's a reason that a lot of these classic love stories have unhappy endings. Because if you tried to follow these people into a real, mature adult relationship, it would be miserable. Think about it. When people say love story, what's the first thing that comes to mind? That's right, Romeo and Juliet. Love story for the ages, right? Until you remember the fact that Juliet was 13 years old, Romeo wasn't much older. He had been in love with another girl named Rosalind like 12 seconds before he met Juliet, and their entire relationship, from meeting to marriage to him unaliving her cousin to consummation to his exile, all take place within the span of about 48 hours, and yes, in that order. And of course, we all know how it ends. Except for those 9th grade students who were in my classroom the other day as alternate students when I was using the ending of Romeo and Juliet for my 12th graders as an example of dramatic irony. Apparently they did not know how the play ended before. The 9th grade teacher told me later that some of them were pretty mad at me. Look, I'm sorry for the spoilers, guys, but the play is 400 years old. You had time. Anyway, even if those two had survived, they probably would have broken up like a week later because, based on his track record, Romeo would have found some other girl and dumped her. Women made this man more impulsive than Archie Andrews. These kids were never going to have a happy ending. Contemporary love stories? Twilight is about a 100-year-old man who cosplays as a high school student, stalks a teenage girl, and isolates her from her friends and family. That's not a love story, that's a how-to manual on starting your own cult. The Joker and Harley Quinn? That is a textbook abusive relationship. He mistreats her, dismisses her feelings, gaslights her, and basically only keeps her around to satisfy his enormous ego. Say what you will about the Snyderverse, but you gotta give those people credit for giving Harley an entire movie to go to therapy after she wises up and leaves his pasty behind. Okay, by therapy I largely mean blowing things up, but the premise is the same. You know what kind of love stories I like? I like the ones where the characters are actually good for each other, where they actually have a future. It's easy to find couples in fiction that love each other. Give me a couple that likes each other.
I love you and I like you.
I love you and I like you.
You know why Bob's Burgers is such a great show? Because despite the fact that Linda is clinically insane, Bob is absolutely miserable if he's away from her for more than 5 minutes. When she pushes him out of his comfort zone, he is better for it. He learned to break dance for her, for heaven's sake. Would your precious Heathcliff ever have done that? Okay, this Heathcliff would have. Gomez and Morticia Addams. Creepy, kooky, mysterious, spooky, and 100% devoted to one another. Gomez's purpose on Earth is to make his wife happy, and Morticia's purpose on Earth is to let him. Each of them sincerely believes that they are married to the most perfect, glorious, unique human being on the face of the earth, and they're both right. Frank and Sadie Doyle from the Thrilling Adventure Hour, a pair of paranormal investigators who love each other so much that they are visibly irritated anytime they're called upon to do their job of investigating the paranormal, because it means that they're going to have to take time away from each other. And their martinis. Rick and Evelyn O'Connell from the 1999 cinematic masterpiece The Mummy, starring Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz. Two people from completely different worlds who find each other and by the end of the first movie are wholly devoted to each other. And they stay together. There are so many film franchises that feel the need to do some sort of stupid reset when there's a sequel. Happy endings get overridden, successes get invalidated, and couples that were fine at the end of the movie are somehow broken up in the interim. Not Rick and Evie. In the sequel, they're still together and still very much in love. Also the third movie, but I hear that one's being wiped from canon by this new one that they're going to be doing. Damn, I can't wait for that. There are some people, certain comic book editors I can mention, for example, who think that telling stories about a couple in a stable relationship is boring, that you can't tell any good stories about them. With all due respect to people who are admittedly far more successful in this whole creative space than I am, that's a load of guano. If you can't think of anything interesting to do with a couple except to have them fight, resent each other, and ultimately break up, that's a failure as a writer. There are plenty of long-term superhero couples who still get compelling storylines. Reed and Sue, Lois and Clark, Wally and Linda, Garfield and Raven. Not that Raven. Here's the thing. I'm not saying that every story has to have a happy ending, but I do feel like we'd be better off as a society if we saw more stories about couples who actually have a chance to stay together after the credits roll. I sincerely believe that a lot of people who are miserable in their own relationships feel that way, at least in part, because movies and TV shows have convinced them to look for this, when real happiness is finding this. Now, there is a couple by the end of my novel, Opening Night of the Dead, and I promise you, I haven't broken them up in any future stories. Just saying.